All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started. I'm very excited to welcome everybody here today. My name's Beth Pan. I'm the Senior Vice President of Strategic Partnerships and Convenings at Points of Light. And this is the second webinar in our series leading up to the Points of Light conference in June. We're very excited to have AI strategist Jennifer Ives with us to lead this session on building AI confidence across the social impact sector. Jennifer works with leaders across the public, private, and nonprofit sectors, navigating artificial intelligence with clarity, confidence, and care. And we all know AI is everywhere. And yet many people, myself included, still feel unsure about where to begin, how to advance my skills, and how to engage responsibly. But Jennifer's here to help. We will leave time at the end for questions. So as Jennifer's going through her presentation today, feel free to put your questions in the Q&A. Jennifer, welcome. It's my pleasure to introduce you and take the lead.
Hi.
Thanks so much.
Oh, absolutely. Oh my goodness. It's so wonderful to be here with everyone today and to see in the chat the variety of geographies and cities and locations. That just shows me the interest is great and we're all in the right place at the right time together today. So, it's just really exciting for everyone to be together today. So, in particular, with everything on your plates, right? Everything that you do on a daily basis and everything that's on your plate, you're taking the time to understand artificial intelligence and what this moment means to you, your mission, your teams, your work. And, many of you are not here to just use AI for yourselves, but to decide how it shows up in your own organization. Excuse me, your own organizations. And I'll be sure to call out moments where leadership judgment matters explicitly. So know that I will do that. And I want to name something up front because I hear it everywhere. And some of the things that you hear, that I hear and that you're thinking is, I feel behind. And Beth mentioned, something that she's feeling. I feel behind. I don't want to get this wrong. And others may be thinking, I'm already experimenting and I'm not sure what boundaries actually are in my organization. So we're going to have some in today's conversation who are just getting started in artificial intelligence and their use of it and their curiosity around it, and others who are a little bit further along. And just know that both of these reactions and questions and thoughts are completely reasonable. AI is everywhere right now, and clarity is not. And the uncertainty around artificial intelligence, right, that has a way of showing up as hesitation, as quiet experimentation, and sometimes as complete avoidance. And so none of this means that people aren't capable. It usually means that they care about doing the right thing. So let me be very clear about what today is and what it's not. We are going to be talking in plain language, right? This is a plain language AI session focused on building your AI confidence. It's not a technical deep dive. It's not a product demo, and it's not about moving fast for the sake of moving fast. You're allowed to start small. In fact, starting small is the responsible way to start with artificial intelligence, especially in mission driven work where trust, accuracy, human judgment, all of those things matter, and they matter greatly. So by the end of our time together, my goal is that you can do three very practical things. First, that you'll be able to explain what AI is without the hype, without feeling like you need to sound technical to be taken seriously. And second, you'll have a simple framework or two for working with artificial intelligence that improves the results of your work and reduces the risk. No tricks. It's a real way of thinking, right? So I'm going to share a couple of frameworks and a couple of ways of thinking that will help with those things. And third, you'll be able to decide what's safe to try using a clear, I call it the traffic light model, clear model, which is green, yellow, red. And so when I mention AI confidence, That doesn't mean knowing every tool. So you don't need to feel that you know every single tool to feel AI confident. It means being able to take the next step on, I'm going to refer to Monday morning, but we know that tomorrow is Thursday, right? So, but the next step on Monday morning, and without feeling anxious or reckless or stuck. And so that's the bar. That's my commitment to you today with our time together. We can go to the next slide. And so before we dive in, I want to ground us in how today is going to flow. I talked about a little bit of kind of the three things we're going to talk about, but I also want to talk about how today will flow. As I mentioned, today's session is not about tools or trends. It's about your judgment. And here's what we're going to cover together. And I mentioned a couple of these things. We're going to get clear about what artificial intelligence is. We're going to actually look at it at a definition. We're going to get clear about it, and we're going to work from the same baseline of that definition. And we'll talk about where it's safe to start with artificial intelligence. And then from there, I'm going to show you how to think about responsible artificial intelligence, responsibility around AI, not as AI as a decision maker, but AI as a support tool. And then finally, we're going to talk about what confidence actually looks like in practice, right? For individuals and for leaders. So plain language, practical judgment, no hype today. That's our goal. And before we go any further, I want to get a sense of who's actually in the room and your levels of how you're feeling about artificial intelligence. So let's take a poll. Let's launch the first poll. And there are no right or wrong answers, by the way. How would you describe your current experience using AI at work? You're just getting started. You've tried a few things. It's a little inconsistent, but you're trying, you're testing. You use it regularly, and you use it so regularly, in fact, that you help guide others. And so once we see a little bit of that come in, again, remember, no right or wrong answers. We'll give it a few minutes for the poll results. So I'm seeing A's and B's and C. Yeah, okay, great. Yep. So we're seeing a kind of almost equal between just getting started, tried a few things, and then using AI regularly. The helping guide others, this is exactly where I would expect us to be, especially with this large of a group. So thank you for that. That's very helpful. That's very helpful. And if you're just getting started, if you answered A, you're not behind. You're early in a moment that is still unfolding, and it's unfolding rapidly, so you're not behind. If you're already using AI, you're not alone in trying to figure out what responsible actually looks like in real work and not just the headlines. And here's the one thing I want everyone to hear before we move on. AI fluency and confidence is not about memorizing the tools. You're going to hear me say this often today. It's about judgment. It's about judgment when to try, judgment about when to slow down, and to be honest, judgment about when to stop. And that's what we're going to build together today. And to do so, we're going to kind of share a few baselines, and so we can get started there. So we can go to the next slide. And so before we get into definitions and use cases, which we are going to get into, I want to name something that tends to lower anxiety almost immediately, that there is a safe place to start with AI for. So for those who answered kind of the A's and maybe even into the B's, not everything is risky, not everything is urgent, and not everything needs a policy before you can learn. And that's important to know, because when people don't know where the boundaries are, one of two things usually happens. Either they freeze completely and avoid artificial intelligence, AI altogether, or they experiment quietly without guardrails, just hoping nothing goes wrong, right? Hoping that they're not tinkering too far without knowing too much about artificial intelligence. And neither of those are really good places to be. And what most people are actually looking for is permission to learn without fear. So here's the framing that we're going to use today. There's green, there's yellow, and there's red. We're going to come back to this over and over again. We've got a slide on the traffic light, the green, yellow, red. So you're going to hear me refer to green, yellow, red. And today we're going to start with green. Green is where learning is allowed. Green is where mistakes are low cost. Green is where human review is automatically built in. Green is where your confidence grows. And we are going to talk about yellow, where you're going to slow down, you're going to add some structure, you're going to become more intentional. And we're also going to be very clear about red, where you stop unless there are formal safeguards in place. But you don't need to memorize any of that just yet. The only thing I want you to do right now is to hold on to the fact that we have a map, we have a framework. You're not going to be asked to figure this out by instinct or intuition alone. We're going to walk through what I refer to as that traffic light model in a little bit, and we're going to do that together. And for now, there is a way to move forward that's thoughtful and responsible and aligned with the kind of trust-based work that you are involved with every day. And one more thing before we move on, starting as green, in the green zone, the green light, the green area, it's not being cautious or conservative, it's being smart. It's how responsible organizations actually learn new tools without creating unnecessary risk or anxiety. And once people know where the green is, they exhale, they relax, they ask really good questions, they learn faster. And so that's what we're setting up here today together. So let's align on language, and we're going to clarify what we even mean when we say artificial intelligence, because that word is often used in many different ways. So let's go to the next slide. And at its core, artificial intelligence isn't thinking or reasoning like a human. The definition, a commonly known and commonly held, a commonly referenced definition, is that artificial intelligence is the ability of a computer system to perform tasks that typically require human intelligence, such as reasoning, problem solving, and understanding language. So generative AI, kind of where does that fit into to the realm of artificial intelligence? It's a pattern recognition and prediction tool trained on human-like language. And you may know Gen AI as large language models, right? Those are the models that are generative AI based. These models are trained to look at massive amounts of existing information and work in a certain way. Based on what I've seen before, here's a likely next word, draft, summary, recommendation, right? It's looking for patterns. Gen AI does not have human context. It does not know your why. Instead, it has an incredible map of how things have been done before. And at its core, it's, as I mentioned, it's a world-class pattern recognizer. And one helpful way to picture Gen AI is a probability engine, similar to like the autocomplete on your smartphone, except that it's operating at a much larger scale. It's very good at getting you started. It is not designed to decide what's right. It is not thinking in the human sense. It is simply calculating the highest probability of what should come next based on billions and billions of data points. And so, again, I'm going to reinforce this because it's really important. What it doesn't have is it doesn't have judgment. It doesn't know your community. It does not understand your mission. It does not know your values. That context lives within all of us as human beings. And that's incredibly important for us to remember. It's a great first draft partner and strategic thought partner. It is not a final decision maker. And some of the common LLMs, just again, for anyone who's newer to artificial intelligence and just wants to kind of put all of this together, some common large language models include OpenAI's ChatGPT, Anthropic's Claude, Google's Gemini, Microsoft Copilot, Perplexity. Those are all, I'm hoping that those are all tools, platforms that you've heard before. And if you were wondering about them, there you go. Those are your large language models. That's not the be all end all list, but those are some that are common and that you're probably hearing lots about. And so if this already helps you sort through some conversations about artificial intelligence that you've heard in meetings or in headlines, that's exactly the point. I want you to have this information, baseline information, so that you can feel more confident no matter what meeting you walk into where artificial intelligence may be discussed. And again, today isn't about making you a technical expert. Our goal together is to help increase that AI fluency that I mentioned so that you can ask even better questions and make extremely sound judgments when it comes to artificial intelligence and to increase your confidence around these conversations. And to do that, there's one metaphor that tends to help people manage both the usefulness and the risk of these systems. And here's the metaphor that I want you to keep in mind. We can go to the next slide. Think of large language models as eager college level interns. And I say college level interns because just 2.5, 3 years ago, when large language models hit the scene, I would have said, think of them like an eager intern. Now they know enough that these are eager college level interns. They're smart, they're fast, they're good at following patterns, and they really, really, really want to help. And as mentioned, they don't have context. They don't understand your mission. They don't understand this unless you provide that information to them. They do know when you're, and I actually, I want to go back to one more piece around the context, and we're going to get to that in prompting. So please know, I'm not going to leave you hanging with kind of how to provide the context to the large language models. So we'll get to that. What I also want to mention is something else that they do not know. They do not know they're wrong unless you check their work, right? So that combination is where both the opportunity and the risk live. They can be very, very helpful. And there are some challenges. There are some things that you need to know about large language models and using artificial intelligence and leveraging artificial intelligence. So let's unpack it just a bit. An LLM, your intern, right, can draft quickly. They can summarize. It can organize information. It can take a first pass at something that feels overwhelming to start. And that's incredibly useful. But you would never in a million years give an intern a vague assignment, walk away and assume the resulting product was ready to send externally without human review, right? You would never not coach and not kind of provide additional information and coaching and guidance to your intern. You wouldn't give them a task and simply say, like, make this community report better, and then, just continue walking along, whether it's in an email and you send it to them, or you put it on their desk and say, just make this better, and then you walk on down the hall. You'd never do that. You would expect questions, you would expect iteration, you'd expect to coach them and stay accountable in their success. And AI works the same way. So the intern metaphor helps explain something that many people feel but don't always say out loud. And so when AI output feels generic, it feels stilted, or we've all been there, even those who are newer, right, who identified as newer to AI and raised your hand at the A answer. You've probably seen output that feels generic and it feels tonally not quite right. And it's because the intern wasn't managed or coached very well with the prompts that it was given to provide that information. And especially in social impact work, where credibility and relationships and care are so central to the work that we're all involved with, it's critical to work with artificial intelligence in ways that build on your work and not take away from it. So the goal isn't blind trust. The goal is appropriate trust. AI cannot replace human judgment. It simply is there to extend your own capacity. And this framing also helps with some fear and anxiety that is quite common, in particular with individual contributors and managers. When I look at the studies show that in particular, those who are individually contributing in organizations and managing those who are individually contributing in organization, that is where there's a much higher level of fear and anxiety about what AI is and the work that they should and shouldn't do with AI related to their jobs. Because listen, if AI were an all-knowing system making decisions, we'd need a very different conversation. So that's not what this is. And it's a system that does things like generate draft and suggestions based on patterns. So again, I'm going to be really specific about some of what it needs, and you're going to hear me say it a couple of times today. It needs clear direction. It needs boundaries. It needs human accountability. And once we all understand that, the confidence, that anxiety and fear that I was just mentioning, those are some things that help tremendously with those who are feeling some anxiety, who are feeling some fear. Clear boundaries, clear direction, human accountability, because this stops being about keeping up with technology and it starts about something that we as humans know how to do in some form or capacity, which is thoughtful delegation, thoughtful review, and thoughtful judgment. These are all things that we as human beings know how to do and are working on it even more so every day, right? But we understand thoughtful delegation, thoughtful review, and thoughtful judgment. I want that to really I want that to really sink in, because our intern metaphor is going to come back again when we talked about prompting and safe use. And for now, I just want you to hold on to this. AI can help you move faster on the parts of work that drain your time and energy. Some people refer to that as the friction in your work. Some people refer to that. I was speaking with an organization last week, and we talked about administrative toil, right? Humans stay responsible for the meaning, the values, and the decisions. And that's the balance that we want to keep front and center. And so now that we've grounded ourselves in what kind of systems actually is, let's talk about how it should and should not show up in our work. So let's go ahead and move to the next slide. And remember, AI works best as a support tool, not a decision maker, right? That's going to be true across all roles: individual contributor roles, management roles, director, executive leader. Works best as a support tool. It's very good helping with scale and volume. It helps you get started when maybe a blank page feels heavy. It helps you organize scattered information. It can help you draft and summarize and structure ideas. And then what it does not do well, and what it should never be asked to do, you're going to hear me say it a few times today, is depend on its own judgment, right? It does not have judgment. It should never be given its own judgment. It doesn't understand your mission. It doesn't understand the nuance of your relationships. And it doesn't carry, quite honestly, the responsibility if something goes sideways, right? If something goes wrong, the responsibility always stays with the people, right? With human beings. And so this distinction matters, because a lot of frustration comes from asking AI to do the wrong kind of work. And when people say, we were talking about, earlier, it sounds tonally wrong, or it didn't sound like us, or it just felt off. That's often an issue that the system was treated like an answer engine instead of a support tool, right? It's not the search engine as we know Google and other search engines are, right? It's a support tool. And in effective organizations who are using artificial intelligence effectively, they're using AI in different ways to produce different things. And we're going to talk about some of those examples. And they always have that human to review, adjust, verify, and decide. And we're looking for support that gives us, right, as mission-driven human beings, more time and more energy to do the work that only we can do, right? And that's AI is really good at helping us create more time for us to do that kind of work. And so this is why starting small, right, with small AI use cases, testing and learning, that's why it matters so much. And when we hear AI, sometimes people assume that they need to transform, right? Organizations need to transform everything at once. And that is not true. And that's not the goal. And so the goal is to identify moments where AI can help with, again, some examples: drafting, organizing, synthesizing. But you want to start small, and then you're going to want to test and learn while always keeping the human in the loop. And so let's make it a little more tangible. Instead of talking in abstractions, let's see what this looks like on the day-to-day across our organizations. And we'll go to the next slide. And we're going to talk about some everyday uses. If you're like me and you've just come out of a meeting and maybe it ran long, and you have notes in a document, and you've got some bullets that are kind of half finished and many action items to follow up on. And now you're expected to very quickly send a clear follow-up, make sure nothing important gets lost, and do it as fast as possible. Some people are looking for that information an hour after the meeting. Some people are saying, by the end of the day, very quickly, right? And that's in between everything else that you have on your plate, all the other responsibilities that you have. And that moment, that's where AI can help, as an example, help most, because it can do a lot of that with you, and it can do it safely and immediately. And so let's break it down by role, because where friction shows up changes as responsibility, right? As your personal responsibility on your team and in your organization, as that responsibility changes. So for our individual contributors that are here in the session today, AI is definitely most useful when work is word heavy, repetitive, hard to start for a number of reasons. And that's not because the thinking is hard, but because turning thinking into something clear and actionable takes time. And in the meeting example, AI could help you turn those notes into a clean internal summary, separate decisions from open questions, and draft a follow up that you'll still review before you send it out. It can do that in a matter of seconds. Nothing is being decided by artificial intelligence. Nothing sensitive is being shared. You're remaining fully in control. And it's helping you do that administrative toil that we talked about, or kind of the friction that we talked about. It's helping you do that in seconds. And so, this is what I call that green zone. We're going to talk more about the green, yellow, and red zones, but this is that green zone work that we mentioned before. And it's a great place to start building your AI confidence. So if you're in the A bucket with that first poll, this is a great place to start building some of that AI confidence and really start experimenting there. For managers, the same moment shows up for you, and it can look a little bit different, right? You're likely not simply summarizing one meeting. You're likely synthesizing across meetings, plural, people, timelines, plural, priorities, plural. And here AI can help with things like combining multiple updates into one coherent summary, turning various inputs into a clear plan, drafting agendas or discussion questions so that meetings are more focused. So again, AI isn't managing your teams, it's reducing the cognitive load so that you can spend quality human time guiding and coaching your teams, right? That's where we all want to be. That's the kind of time that we want to be spending. And for directors and executives that are joining us today, the value shifts again, right? So AI isn't about doing more work. It's about seeing the work more clearly. It's about seeing at a broader scale where the friction lives, where the judgment matters across your organization, and where teams are needing permission. And you're often using artificial intelligence, some of the examples I just mentioned for sure, you're often using it as a thought partner, not to decide, but to think alongside. So, a strategic thought partner. We see that a lot with executive directors and C-suite leaders. And again, this might look like you may say, yes, this is me. I identify with kind of each one that she's described. This might look like drafting multiple versions of a message for different audiences, pressure testing how something might land across those audiences, turning complexity into a one-page briefing. And across all of the mentioned roles that we just discussed, the pattern stays the same. AI supports drafting, structure, and synthesis. Humans own the judgment, the values, and the accountability. So no matter where you sit in the organization, right, the pattern is the same. The drafting and the structure and the synthesis, and we as human beings being responsible for judgment, values, and accountability. And as you heard these examples, my hope is that you took note of which one might have jumped out at you, might have felt most familiar to you, because that is usually your best starting point, right? When we talk about getting started with artificial intelligence, that's usually your best starting point. And what I want you to notice is that none of the examples were about doing AI, right? They were about reducing friction in work that you already do. And the friction shows up in different places for different roles, which is a really important distinction for all of us to understand and appreciate and empathize with. So before we go any further, let's understand where that friction feels most real for you. Let's go to poll number 2. We're going to talk about kind of where that identity friction, that role friction shows up. And it's things like writing or drafting, managing information and volume, coordination and follow-ups, and that's okay too if you're not sure where AI could help. That's all right too. We want to hear and see what everyone is thinking and feeling. And as we're waiting for that to come up, we generally know that people aren't stuck because they lack tools. They're stuck because that friction that we talked about shows up in different places for different people, right? And the goal of AI isn't to do everything, it's to reduce the friction. And again, sometimes it's called friction, sometimes it's called administrative toil. And if you're not sure where to start, that's okay. It's not a failure. It simply means that some of the frameworks we're going to talk about and the tools, that those things are going to help you. Okay, writing and drafting emails and updates. And thank you for those who said, I'm really not sure where I could help. I'm hoping that some of the conversation so far is giving you some ideas to think about. Great. We'll go to the next slide. And here's that framework. Here's the visual to that framework that I was mentioning, right? The traffic light model. And up to this point, we've talked about what AI is, what it's good at, how it tends to behave. And now we're going to talk about the questions that are sitting underneath almost every concern I hear across multitude of organizations around the world. And that is, how do I know what's okay to try? And that question is where the vast majority of people's anxiety lives. And it's not because people don't want to be responsible, right? It's because they feel uncertain, and it pushes people to one of two extremes. Either, we mentioned before, freezing completely, or experimenting quietly without guardrails, and that's known as shadow AI. When you have people working using artificial intelligence within your organization that you're unaware of. And so neither of those is ideal. And so the traffic light model provides us with a shared way to kind of pause, assess, decide. It's not about being perfect. It's about building our muscle, kind of our muscle memory and our muscle understanding around judgment. And this model isn't just an individual tool, right? This, leaders, here you go. This can become a shared leadership language across your entire organization. When teams share this model and they share this language, they're able to really quickly put words to projects that they're working on, decisions that they're making, and the AI experimentation becomes visible instead of hidden, right? Again, instead of shadow AI. So the green light work, green zone, green light, right? This is where use cases should absolutely begin. The information's public or non-sensitive. A human's going to review the output. The downside of being wrong or having it, maybe give you information that you don't agree with, or you need to reprompt, that is low. And this is where AI works best for beginners. And again, it's the editing, the writing of the writing and rewriting of drafts, the summarizing of notes that you've already written, the brainstorming of ideas, outlines, or questions, turning bullet points into clearer structures, clearer and cleaner structures. These are drafting and thinking tasks. They're not decisions. This is the safest place to learn how the tool behaves and how you like to work with it. And then the yellow light, right? This is where we want to slow down, and we want some very specific guardrails. It doesn't mean don't use AI. It means take a breath, take a beat, very clearly understand what information is being shared. Is it public? Is it private? Be clearer in your instructions, right? Review the output, the instructions and the output even more carefully. So yellow light work tends to look like work that is influencing trust. It's requiring a higher level of accuracy and tone awareness. It might be an output that often goes to donors or partners or to your staff. And those examples, donor communications, right? Just mentioned donors, internal strategy drafts, leadership talking points, workforce related materials. This is where prompting quality really matters. This is where, clear role, clear goal, clear boundaries, clear guardrails around what information you're inputting into your large language model, into that model. Humans stay very clearly front and center, highly accountable. Red light, pause, use formal safeguards. Like, you need formal safeguards in place. This is where we stop or we escalate. And these examples include PII information, that personal sensitive data, decisions affecting someone's rights or access, legal, financial documents. So we're talking about like beneficiary or client personal information, medical, legal advice, private donor records, automated decisions about eligibility or services. And here's the line I want you to remember. If the cost of being wrong is high, AI should not be acting alone, right? So this way of thinking aligns closely with national guidance like NIST standards. And by the way, I've got some resources at the end of this slide deck that's going to be sent to you. And I've got a hyperlink to the NIST standards so that you can find them, so that you can read through them and take a look. You don't need to memorize these frameworks. You do need to remember this, right? Have a habit of asking, what traffic light color does this task look like, or does, my work align to which color? So in short, start green, slow down in yellow, stop in red. And when people know where these boundaries are, even just the green, yellow, red boundaries, confidence goes way up, not down. And this is where leadership shows up. And so leaders, when you share your own green zone use cases out loud with your teams, with your organization, you are inherently giving teams permission to experiment with AI and to learn without fear. So I really encourage you to talk often about how you yourself are using artificial intelligence in your daily work. So now that we've got that framework for where AI use cases sit, the next question generally becomes, how do we actually get good at results when we do leverage AI, right? How do we do that? And this is where prompting, and this is another way of saying managing and coaching the intern, this is where it really matters. So let's go ahead and move to the next slide. I'm going to talk about prompting a little bit. And I want you to think about prompting as a management skill, because effective prompting really is where the biggest gap between frustration and confidence tends to show up. And people, you've heard already, and you've probably said it yourself, right? I tried AI, it sounded generic. 9 times out of 10, the issue is not the tool; it's the way the task was delegated. We hit on that a little bit at the top of the session, and this is the reframe that I want you to hold on to. Prompting is not a technical skill. It is a management skill all day long. It is a delegation management skill. If AI is your eager college intern, prompting is how you coach that intern, how you guide the intern. And just like with people in your teams, vague instructions create guesswork, and it creates guesswork in AI in exactly the same way. So this matters not only for your quality, but for the safety of how you're using artificial intelligence, because when prompts are vague, the model fills the gap, right? And when it fills gaps, that's where you tend to find hallucinations happening, right? Hallucinations is when it just goes and makes something up that is 100% not true. That's where tone tends to drift, and that's where assumptions start to sneak in the answers that it's giving you, or the work that it's doing with you. And so clear directions, they don't fully eliminate the risk, but quick shout out for human in the loop, because human in the loop, you're going to see that. You know the context, you have the judgment, you identify when some of these things are happening. What it does do is it lowers the risk significantly, especially in that yellow zone work that we talked about. Another thing that tends to trip people up is this idea that the first output should be perfect, right? You put a prompt in, you get an output, and it should be perfect, and it's not, and I'm frustrated. That is not how LLMs work, right? That's not how these platforms work. Think of prompting like a conversation. You're allowed to coach. You need to prompt it along. You need to be working with it. You wouldn't chastise an intern because the first draft came back wasn't so great. You wouldn't do that, right? You'd say something like, this is a good start. Let's make this shorter. Let's adjust the tone. This needs to sound more human, right? Whatever you would do in coaching that intern based on what it is that you ask them to help you with, the same mindset applies here. And this is where your AI confidence comes from, and where you can root yourself in it. It's not getting that prompt right the first time. It's trying hard and really setting the stage, but it's knowing that you can coach and you can continue to shape the output. And once we understand prompting as a delegation, that management skill, AI stops feeling unpredictable and it starts feeling much more manageable. And manageable systems are much easier to trust. So let's go ahead and look at a mental model, right? We're going to make this practical. We're going to look at what good delegation looks like when we're working with AI. And here's a simple framework that comes in. You can screenshot this. Again, you're going to get the slide deck at the end. So you'll have it for your own information. It's a framework I come back to again and again. It's simple, it's reusable, it works across all tools and all experience levels. And I call it the 4-part prompt framework: role, goal, context, guardrails. And you do not need to memorize this perfectly. Even adding 1 or 2 of these elements to your prompts is going to increase and improve the quality and safety immediately. So we're going to walk through each part really quickly, and then we're going to walk through some examples, right? So role, who should it act like? You're going to want to start by telling the system who it is supposed to be. Act like a nonprofit manager, act like a communications director, act like an internal operations lead. You're not asking it to become that person. You're giving it a lens by which to see the work that you're going to do together. You're giving it that lens. Otherwise, it's simply just guessing. Second, you're going to name a goal. What does success look like, right? What do you want your output to be? Not just help me with this, but draft a first pass summary, create a short internal update, outline talking points for a staff meeting, right? That clarity is going to save time. It also prevents the model from doing too much or going in the wrong direction. The third, context. What does the AI not know? This is oftentimes the most overlooked part in a prompt. AI, again, to reiterate, it doesn't know your organization, doesn't know your audience, doesn't know your constraints. It doesn't know what happened before the very moment that you started working with it. Now, the context might include who the audience is, why this matters, why the work that you're doing or the work that you're asking it to help you with matters, and how it will be used. And the more important the work, the more the context matters. And finally, fourth, guardrails. What should it not do? This is where safety and trust come into play. Guardrails tell the model where to stop. Don't invent facts. Use placeholders if information is missing. Keep this under 200 words. Do not make recommendations. Guardrails reduce hallucinations tremendously. They also reinforce that a human is remaining accountable in this work. So here's the pattern that I want you to notice. Every time AI output feels a little risky or disappointing, one of these was likely missing, right? The role, the goal, the context, or the guardrails. And the framework doesn't make AI perfect, but it definitely makes it more predictable. So let's go ahead to the next slide. And it gives you a little bit more information around prompting. And the reason that we're staying with prompting for so long is because whether you're new to artificial intelligence or you're on, if it's a scale of experience and expertise, you're, wherever you are on that scale, prompting is something that you can always learn to do better. So that's why, and it kind of bakes in those guardrails, and it helps us talk about a lot of things at once through the conversation around prompting. So, an example. So let's look at an internal coordination coordinator role. So an IC, right? One of the best places that you can start is that low external risk, high time saving, easy to review. Think about the meeting notes that we talked about. Meeting notes as an example, you leave a meeting, you've got all the bullets, your action items in different places, unclear next steps. The weak prompt, summarize these notes. It's far too vague. The model has to guess at so many pieces of what you're asking it to do. Stronger version, act like a nonprofit program manager, turn the notes below into a clear internal summary. The audience is our project team. Highlight decisions made, open questions, and next steps. Keep it to 5 bullet points. Do not add information that is not included in the notes, right? Green light use case, no sensitive data, human reviews built in, and there's very low downside. If it's imperfect, you're going to work with it, and you're going to draft and work alongside it. And so notice that pattern: clear role, clear goal, clear context, clear guardrail. You're still verifying facts. Let's go and use one more. I've got this one typed out for you and on a slide for you. And this is, I get this question a lot: content for a campaign. So you can read through this. I don't need to read through this example for you. I have it all laid out for you. But you'll notice the specificity, right? It's a great example to review and to keep handy. So keep it close by. And listen, we're gonna transition to another poll because I'd love to understand where things stand within your organization. This would be so helpful for me and for the hundreds who are part of this conversation today. So let's go to that poll number 3. And I'm wondering if your organization currently has clear guidance for AI use. It could be a policy. I mean, it would be a policy, but it could be called different things. So as we're waiting for this to come up, let me walk through a couple of things. If you answered A, your challenge now is consistency and adoption. If you answered B, you're in a very healthy place. If you answered C or D, you're not failing. You're very early. And what matters is this: even without a formal policy, which I highly, highly recommend putting in place if you don't have one, But even without that formal policy, individual judgment still matters, and it matters greatly. So it's worth mentioning again, when leaders model, right? Leaders in the session today, when you model your green zone use out loud to your teams and to your organization, they hear you, and you are giving your teams permission to learn without fear. And that's how confidence spreads without recklessness. And so for leaders, the risk now isn't the people, using AI. Great. Oh, this is really, really good to hear. I'm seeing actually equal. So about 30% of the session members have a clear guidance or policy, and I love to see that. And then about 30, almost 40%, and so maybe 50% are don't have one yet, or they're not sure if they have one in place. So, and then I love to see that about 25% are working on it. Good, good, good. Excellent. So for those without a policy, I'm going to give you some references in the resource section. So you're going to have some information. And so let's really kind of wrap this up together so that we can have some Q&A and I can answer some of your questions. Let's go to the next slide. Perfect. What does AI confidence look like? Because it's really easy to assume that it means speed and sophistication using lots and lots of tools. It doesn't, right? We've discussed that today. Real confidence is much quieter than that. And it sounds like when you're in organizations that you hear literally these sentences, these phrases, I'm allowed to start small. I know what's safe to try, and I know when to slow down. I know accountability stays with people, right? These are real phrases and sentences that I've heard repeatedly in organizations that have a very high level of AI confidence and AI comfort. So that's why I chose those specific sentences and phrases to share with you. And I'd love to leave you with a Monday morning action plan, again, knowing that tomorrow's Thursday, but you get the idea. Monday morning action plan. So if you're an individual contributor, your next step, this is what I ask of you. Just choose one place where your work has some friction to it. Choose one green light task within that work. Write one prompt using the framework that we discussed. Run it, review it, improve upon it, and then share what you learned with at least one other person, preferably on your team and or in your organization. And that's it. That is my ask of you after today's session. And if you're leading teams or entire organizations, this next slide is for you. You get your own slide on this because you have a couple more steps. I'm going to ask you to share one green zone use case with your team. I've mentioned it a couple of times. It's really important that you're sharing your own use of artificial intelligence. Let them know where AI helped you and model that for them, right? Because not only how did it help you, but where the human judgment played a role. And that one step does more for your teams than any policy draft. It allows them to exhale, because to be very honest, AI doesn't need executive ownership to start. Again, we talked about shadow AI. It's likely happening in your organization with or without a policy, with or without you talking about it. That's not a place that you want to be. It does require executive clarity, right? So when leaders show up and when they share where and how AI is helping them, teams move faster, they move safer. AI is adopted across your organization in really exciting ways that help you be able to spend more time with those that you are serving versus on that administrative toil that we discussed. And confidence grows through these small wins and these visible habits. And so, AI is moving fast. That part is real. It is not our job to chase it. It's our job to lead thoughtfully. It's our job to protect trust and to use tools in ways that support your mission, our mission, and the people that we serve. So start green, slow down when needed, stop when risk is high. And listen, that's how confidence grows. Before we open it up to Q&A, I want to take one final quick poll to understand what feels most useful to you going forward. We're going to do this really quickly, and then we're going to get right into Q&A. So after today, what feels like the most useful next step? No right or wrong answer. None of this, I don't take any of it personally. I'm just really, I want your session mates to kind of understand and see where everyone is. Try one small low risk experiment, set clearer guidance or norms with your organization, build confidence and shared understanding across the team or across the organization. And the final question, final choice is to pause and learn more before trying anything. There is no right or wrong answer to this poll. As you're figuring that out and kind of answering that, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for letting me join you today. Thank you for the work that you do and for your time and your curiosity. I would love to hear your questions and answer anything that I can in our last kind of 15-ish minutes together. Great. Try one small low risk experiment, more than 30%. Set clear guidance. Excellent. Build confidence and shared understanding across the team. Excellent. Good, good, good. Love to see all the proactive steps that are going to be taken. Wonderful. Well, with that, Beth, I'm happy to answer questions and help in any way.
Thank you, Jennifer. This I have learned a lot. I've been taking a lot of notes.
Great.
We will unlikely get to all of the questions, but I'm going to try to group some of them, and we'll follow up as well after this session with some more information. But I think one of the general questions that came out from Chad is, are there significant differences between the free and the premium LLMs that are available?
Yes, there is. That's a great question. There is. So when you're in the free versions, not only is there not, and I'm going to speak in non-technical terms. I'm a technologist, so I'm going to speak in non-technical terms. There's not as much memory provided to you in that. So it's going to, if you've ever used a free version of any of the LLMs, you may have noticed that if you put a lot of information in, and by the way, it's probably all public information. I have no doubt. I have no fear that you've been putting information in, and then all of a sudden it starts to kind of forget what you've been talking about if you've been using it. It's because of it on the technical on the backside. It's a memory piece. So that's a little bit about the free version. The free version is also, it's not your own sandbox. So that's a product, that's a technical term, right? You're playing in your sandbox, but really think about a playground where your information in that sandbox is kept very specific to you. Anything that you put into a free version is for the public. It is for if you in some free versions you can turn off the ability to train the model. That does not mean that you've turned off the ability for that company to have the data that you've put in there. So just understand, and this is how I think about free versions. Free versions, you're the product. You're putting data in, it's absorbing the data, and it is absorbing all the data that you're putting in. So the subscription-based models, you've got that sandbox, you have firewalls. This is why I like to see organizations, even small organizations, I like to see you with some form of subscription-based large language models that you're using. Great question.
Yeah. Thanks for that. I think this, just building on that, this leads to privacy. There have been several questions about privacy. How do are there safeguards for AI note-taking, and especially working with vulnerable populations, and where you have need to follow HIPAA requirements? How do we protect that privacy of that data?
Yeah. So that's another great question. What you're going to want to do, and I'm happy to go offline with anyone if you'd like to link in with me, and we can talk about it a little bit further. But there are specific tools that are best for those kinds of needs. So you're going to want to look, you're going to want to talk with, right? That best information is when you're talking with other organizations that are similar to yours, or that you are working with similar types of data, right? You're going to want to talk and get some advice as to what they're using. You're always going to want to read the fine print on any platform that you bring in. And again, today wasn't so much about tools, so I don't want to be recommending specific tools. I do want you to take a look at the tools. I want you to speak with others in your world who have similar privacy needs around specific data, because there are note-taking tools that are more specific to that kind of a need.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I know we will send out this recording. I know there's some questions coming in about that. We've got a question from Greg. How do you foresee AI impacting volunteering over the next maybe 10 to 15 years?
Oh my gosh, Greg, tell me a little bit more about the context of that question.
I don't know, Greg, if you're still on, you want to put that in the chat?
I'd love to hear just a little more context around the question.
Yeah. I'll ask another one
Okay.
while we're here. Greg, I'll be looking for your response.
Okay.
I think what's one of the biggest mistakes that you see organizations make when starting to use AI?
Yeah, when starting to use AI, and well, one, the policy piece, even a one-page policy, and policy goes along with the conversation, right? Talking about artificial intelligence, discussing it actively with your teams and with your organization. So the discussion around it and about it, policies, strategies, and as leaders, please do not ever assume that because you released a policy one time or you talked about a strategy one time that everyone in the organization attached themselves to that policy or to that strategy. You need to repeat it over and over again, and that's okay, because this has to do, by the way, it roots itself in change management. So this is no different. Artificial intelligence and the changes that are occurring are very steeped in change management practices, so, and transition management, right? And so there's that piece of it. The other piece is really understand that this is not a one and done. When I talk about upskilling and learning and development, this is ongoing, right? We talked about how quickly artificial intelligence is moving, right? The technology itself is moving so quickly. Ethan Mollick famously said about a year ago that if we stopped all innovation at that time, and that was about 12 months ago, if we stopped all innovation, it would take over 5 years for human beings to catch up with all the innovation that had happened in the world of AI. And that was a year ago. Now they believe it's 10 years that it would take us to catch up. That's not to overwhelm you. That's to say there's a lot that's happening. The upskilling is not only a responsibility and an area of interest for your organization, it is on you as an individual. You want to take the upskilling and the learning and the curiosity into your own hands. And there are so many free opportunities. And I will update the resources before it's sent out. I'll go in and I will update the resources so that you'll have some links to some free learning opportunities. It is, I just can't share enough. It is important for organizations. So that's something that I see in organizations where they think that, like, oh, we trained we trained our group now, and next year we'll train them again. No, 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 no. This is totally different. You're going to want the upskilling to happen on a routine basis, and individuals. You want to invest in yourself. And again, there are free ways to do this. There is so much access to free learning around artificial intelligence, unlike any technology that we've seen in terms of free education before. So I highly encourage everyone to, really, in theory, experts say, including myself, you want about 20 minutes a day hands-on of doing something around artificial intelligence, about 20 minutes a day. And that's a number to keep in mind. Don't think that you're not doing anything right if it's 10 minutes a day, or if it's an hour one day and not for a few days, but about 20 minutes a day you should be averaging to keep yourself updated on artificial intelligence.
Yeah, that's great guidance. I want to get back to Greg's question. And Greg,
Yes.
thank you for popping
Oh, good.
some context in the chat. Will it make volunteerism more or less likely? Will AI drive people to crave more in-person human contact?
Okay, so this is a
Interesting.
personal, yes, so this is a personal belief. I have seen it, I am doing it, and I really believe that with the advent of artificial intelligence, the desire to be in person, to be together as human beings in community, has increased exponentially. So I am part of, in my personal life as well as in my professional life, lots of different groups and lots of different areas in my life. And I organize a lot of gatherings. I am so to answer Greg's question, I see it, I experience it, and I believe that it will only increase the desire, right, for human beings to be together. Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I'm going to go to, there have been several questions, and this probably will be our last question around environmental and social impact. Are there resources to talk about that, the environmental and social impact, when colleagues might be concerned? And that might be the reason that they're not wanting to experiment with AI.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm so glad that you asked that question, because what I'll do is I'll put a couple of resources into the resource section around that topic so that people can kind of take a look on their own. Because absolutely, this is something, the social and environmental impact is something that is key, that we should all be talking about, that we should all be aware of the truth around what it means, right? The truth around the power that is required now and into the future, and the truth around the technology that is happening just, on the environmental side around the power, right? The technology that is happening to decrease the amount of power needed. And I mean, there's a lot that's going on. So I'm not speaking in favor one or the other. What I do want to give you are the resources, because that is an area of concern for many people, as it should be. And it is an area where some people have said, I'm just not going to be involved in artificial intelligence at all for these three reasons, or this one reason. And I love that you asked the question, because I want you to have the information. And when someone is saying, I'm not going to be involved in AI for one or three reasons, generally they are not realizing that artificial intelligence is already in their life. And what we all want to do is kind of pull the curtain back so that everyone understands where AI is, how it's being used. We all want voices in these conversations. Diversity of voices is so critical to artificial intelligence. So I love that you asked the question. I will give you some resources on that. And that's a very, very thoughtful question to ask, and a good question to kind of close out the
Yeah.
session today.
Well, Jennifer, we could continue talking, I think, for another couple of hours on this. So thank you so much for joining us today. And I mentioned at the top of this session that this series is part of our lead up into the Points of Light conference. So we hope that this has piqued your interest in the topics and some of the speakers that people will experience at our conference. It's in Washington, D.C., June 22nd through the 25th. There's a link here. We will send you a link to learn more about the conference. And AI is going to be one of those prevalent topics that we'll bring among many others. So Jennifer, thank you for being with us today. And thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you.